One of the biggest talking points in tax over the last couple of years has been the introduction of making tax digital. And whilst we had very good news, which was the deferral of making tax digital for most taxes, and let me just say that again, deferral, it hasn't gone away, it will come in at some point, it was decided that VAT would move to making tax digital from April 19. It is absolutely essential, therefore, that as we approach that deadline, we understand the fundamental aspects of making tax digital, what it means for us, for our businesses, and for various other people. Now, of course, there are three key areas, and Rothmans will be able to help guide you through each of those three problems. But of course, before they can help you, you need to know what it is you need help with. So let's have a look at the three key areas now. And I'm joined as ever by Tim Good. And Tim, the first of those three is quite simply, who has to do it?
Well, not everybody who files VAT returns. It is mandatory if A, you are registered for VAT, and B, your turnover, your VAT turnover, exceeds the 85,000 a year threshold, which, by the way, the government have recently announced will be fixed at that level to give us certainty for another 2 or 3 years. If you have registered voluntarily, despite your turnover being below the VAT threshold, and quite a lot of smaller businesses will do that because their customers are themselves VAT registered and so can recover the VAT that you charge, but you're then able yourself to recover input tax that you suffer. So those registered voluntarily but below the threshold won't have to fall within MTD, but they can if they choose to. And then a further point, it will apply whether you're an ordinary VAT trader or whether you're on the flat rate scheme or you use cash accounting, or indeed whether you're a charity that has to register for VAT or a group, although the latter two will have a 6-month deferral for implementation. But basically, if you're VAT registered, you're going to be doing MTD for VAT.
And worth just pointing out to people who heard, if you're voluntarily registered and all sort of relaxed and thought, great, I can stop listening, if you go over the threshold at any point after the introduction of these rules, then you are in for the whole time that you are then registered.
Right. And once you have become liable to file returns under Making Tax Digital, the only way to come out of that is to deregister for VAT, which of course, if your turnover remains above 85,000, you cannot do.
It wouldn't be an option. So that's who has to do it. When do we have to do it? April 2019 is the key date. 1st of April 2019 is the key date. But with VAT, it's always worth noting it is for periods commencing on or after that date, which means that for most people it will be 1st of April, but for some I guess it would be May or June.
Yes, I mean if your VAT quarters end on 30th of April, 31st of July, 31st of October and 31st of January, then it's going to be your first full quarterly return for April 19 onwards, and that'll be your return to 31st of July 19.
Okay, and so the point is that after the 1st of April 2019 we're going to be involved, or from 1st of May or from 1st of June probably.
Yeah.
The key point though is that we need to make sure we're ready, and that leads us to question 3, which is, having decided who and when, what is it?
There are 2 elements, and the first of these is digital record keeping, and the legislation requires those that are mandatorily within Making Tax Digital for VAT to keep their records in digital form. Now there's a huge variety of ways in which you can achieve that, and it'll range from a full-blown bookkeeping system in or on the cloud down to basic Excel spreadsheets. But what won't be possible once MTD comes in or applies to your business is to maintain a purely manual bookkeeping system, albeit it will be possible to retain a manual bookkeeping system provided that before you file any return under MTD, the manual records have been converted to digital format. So what that'll mean for some traders is that every 3 months, shortly before they file their quarterly VAT return, of course it may be you're filing monthly if you're in a repayment situation, a lot of farmers are, but every time before you file a return, somebody's going to have to enter the transactions into some sort of digital bookkeeping record, but it could be an Excel spreadsheet.
Okay, and so worth noting for those people who are watching who are already on a bookkeeping software package, then probably you're already doing enough as far as digital record keeping is concerned. The second part of it, many people will say, yeah, well, we do that as well, which is the digital filing process.
Yes, and that is the third of your 3 points. Now, the digital filing requires a totally different way of filing VAT returns from what we're used to. At the moment, about 96% of VAT returns are filed by either the trader or an agent logging onto the revenue system and keying in the figures to boxes 1 to 9. And it's that keying in that's no longer going to be allowed. And instead, there has to be a seamless digital transfer from the digital bookkeeping into the revenue system. And this will be done in one of 2 ways. Either the trader will use some sort of proprietary bookkeeping system, of which there are any number on the market, some of them desktop, some of them in the cloud, and the providers of that accounting software will have built into their software the necessary routines for filing the VAT information digitally. So that should not be an issue. There might be an initial signing up process to go through with user IDs and a different government gateway and so on. But what about those traders, of whom there will be hundreds of thousands, who don't want to move on to proprietary bookkeeping packages or into the cloud, but do want to continue with their existing Excel bookkeeping, or indeed convert their manual records into Excel.
And of course the problem for those people is that they have traditionally kept their Excel spreadsheet or their cash book, copied the numbers, got the numbers at the bottom of the page, opened up a new screen for the VAT government gateway, and then have just copied the 9 numbers across into the 9 boxes on the VAT return. And they are probably sitting there thinking, we're fine. We are digitally record keeping, we're digitally reporting, but this is the problem. There has to now get this bridge
It is
across.
This seamless digital transfer, and it's partly driven by the fact that the government and the revenue think that there's a lot of error in the system at the moment because of people rekeying data, transposition errors, keying in 9,100 as your input tax instead of 1,900, that sort of thing. I'm not so sure myself, but anyway, the solution to that is going to be, as you say, bridging software, where if you're using an Excel spreadsheet, you need to have Excel bridging software that will link directly into your Excel spreadsheet, pick up the figures that need to go into boxes 1 to 9 without anybody rekeying or even cutting and pasting, although for the first year there'll be a so-called soft landing that will allow cut and paste, but better probably not to go for that anyway, just go the whole hog from year 1. And that bridging software will then, when you press a button, file it off to HMRC.
And the point here is that this is something that has to be done. From April next year, this has to be done. So we know the 3 key parts. We know who has to do it, VAT registered businesses over the VAT threshold. We know that it comes in for periods beginning on or after 1st of April 19. And we know that we have these 2, or if you like, 3 parts to the problem. We have to record our information digitally, we have to file it digitally, and once we've started the process, we can't start rekeying, re-entry of data is the big no-no in making tax digital. Now, the guys at Rothmans will be able to help you, of course, work out whether you're affected, how you're affected, and when to start worrying about this. Tim, I would say the answer to when to start worrying about it is the sooner the better.
Now.
Yeah, because if you can appreciate that if you start to use this software, whichever software, and Rothmans will be able to point you in the right direction for that, whichever software you use, there's nothing stopping you starting this process as soon as you can, and making sure you're completely happy. You don't have to wait till that moment in July or August next year when you are submitting that first return. Do have a chat to the guys at Rothmans. It is probably the biggest change in VAT since the 1970s, and so it is absolutely essential that we are ready and prepared. And therefore, take the time to look at it, deal with it as soon as you can, and hopefully it'll be a relatively smooth process. For this session though, from both of us, bye-bye.